without further ado, I want to introduce Linda Sikora, who's our speaker this evening, who's in Alfred right now, Alfred, New York. And she's going to talk about ceramic gestures, a studio and teaching practice in North America. And I think you've all received the announcement about this a number of times, and we're really honored to have Linda with us this evening. And I'm going to turn it right over to you, Linda.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I'm always a little disconcerted about talking in a big, empty, quiet room alone and not being able to hear breathing or see people. But thanks for coming. We do our best, and we get to travel through digital media, and that gets us together more often. So I'd like to thank Margaret, of course, and Bill. They're great. I'm excited to see their new place. So big thanks to them. And, and to Margaret Carney, sort of for, all her work at Alfred that I did with her, and for, really getting that museum off the ground, which now has its own home. So Margaret called up, asked for if I could do this with her. And of course, whenever Margaret asks, I have a hard time saying no. And I surprised myself a little because she wanted a title right away. And I said, a teaching and studio practice in North America. And then, went off and didn't think about it for a couple of weeks. And then I thought, what does that mean? I've never actually spoken about my teaching practice or what that is, or in tandem with the studio. So it was interesting to me that I had to suddenly meet it and think about what that was. And of course, there would have been a lot of ways to approach it, and I had to come up with one. And here we go. We'll see how that goes. So let me just get my slide thing here too. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is go through three realms of teaching. I'm going to talk just about teachers that inspire, which is kind of, obvious. That's how we get here. So that's the first one. And then talk about teaching and colleagues that stretch you, and then talk about teaching projects that bring the outside into Alfred, and then talk about my work in studio practice in that order. So we'll go through and see where we end up. So I'm starting in Kootenai School of Art, where I first studied in British Columbia. And it was this school was established by what's kind of weird is this, sorry, I just have to fix Margaret, is there a way to turn, just a sec, maybe I can do this. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I just had to get this strip of attendees off. So this school was founded as a small school in Nelson, British Columbia, and it was founded by an Eastern European Slavic man who was part of the Nazi resistance movement in Eastern Europe. And he was born in 1920, and he ended up in British Columbia, Canada, after the war broke out. And he was the same generation as my father's parents, who also left Eastern Europe for Western Canada at that time. And they came they left for the same reason, and they came to work in Western Canadian orchards and coal mines. And so, of course, you don't know why you end up places, but when you find out stories like that, you often wonder what the pull was. So I was there in the 1990s, and this is, you can see in the image that we're all, there's the pit fire, and we're all sitting around the pit fire, or getting the pit fire, ready to go. And it was, there's a quote that I was looking at in this book called The First House by R.D. Drips. And he said that it was the discovery of fire that originally gave rise to the coming together of humans to deliberative assembly and to social intercourse. And he talks about that being where language started, you know, that once humans came together, language began. And he's quoting Vitruvius from the 10 Books of Architecture. But, you know, so if you know, when you build a fire, people gather. So I think that that's certainly how that works. Okay, let me see. Now I have to figure out how to move the slide. Okay. And so, excuse me while I just get oriented here because the screen I'm getting a little bit used to. Okay, so that was the Kootenai School of Art, and it was a sort of diploma program. It was 3 years, and then I transferred to the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design in Nova Scotia, and here is Walter now, Walter Ostrom, stoking a wood kiln in New Brunswick, a 2-day wood firing field trip from the school in Nova Scotia. And, you know, those of you that know Walter, he's just beyond energetic and influential and inspirational and really wonderful. And so he loves ceramic history. And I have one of his vases up here, or flower brick that he made. And he delivered lectures to us about the history of ceramics, you know, just like he's stoking this wood kiln. That's what he looked like when he delivered lectures, just full of enthusiasm. And on the vase, just to point out some of his, you know, deep sort of dive always into history, there's a central vase on the flower brick. And that image that is on there is from a Zhuchao Chinese vase. And the two baskets that are flanking that vase are actually drawings of flower baskets that he made in ceramics now on his bricks. So he's memorializing himself and his passion of ceramic. And this is that Zhuchao vase. You can see that very same motif. So we had amazing lectures from Walter of history every single week, just passionately. Along with Walter, Neil Force was teaching there, and Sarah Coote was teaching there. And she was another really important teacher to me. She was a brilliant maker. She had gone to Alfred, mid-1980s. She had an amazing sense of form, just stunning, and had this wonderful touch of construction and color and glazing. So this is a terrine. I think this was produced near the end of my time there. I was there for 2 years to finish up the BFA. And this terrine was produced near the end of that time. And certainly it's quite large. It's probably about, I don't know, 16 inches high. And it was partly made in a press mold and thrown parts, but she really promoted this agility with using the wheel as a generator of a whole range of form. So that's an idea of a little bit of what was happening at Nova Scotia. This was the building. We had a great building. This is before the city got hyper-developed lately, but our building was right on the harbor and quite fantastic. From there, I went to Nova Scotia, to Minnesota for graduate school. And Mark Ferris was my teacher there. And of course, Minnesota is the home of the Mingay movement. It's sort of the Midwestern seat of the North American pottery movement that spun off of Leach and Hamada in the USA. Mark's teacher was Warren Mackenzie. And I was looking at this essay that Garth Clark had written a while ago, I think in 2000, about utility in contemporary American ceramics. And he sort of describes Mark as, and he categorizes the ceramic movement in North America at that time in these realms of the purist, the spiritual functionalists, and the symbolists. So Mackenzie and the Mingay Soda crowd would have been the purists. The spiritual functionalists is the next wave of functional makers who were sort of leaving that camp. And of course, the symbolists were people like Betty Woodman, who kept the vessel and maybe moved function into a different relationship. So, and if you look at in the image, the two pots that are in the top corner are thrown pots that are squared. And there was one of these, I have one of this series. So when later on, after I was a student, I came across it, but they're thrown, and the inside of the pot, you can feel the throwing, but then the outside is really diligently squared. So this was the beginning on his path to what you see on the left, which is later work, which is work that is made from slab construction. And you know, Clark really pinpointed Ferris at that time as someone that was really pushing pots in another direction. And he was pretty fantastic to witness again, you know, as a real kind of a modernist and a brilliant maker. So that was Ferris. And here, this is just, I just pulled this off the website. I want you to just notice there's an image of him at the top making, and then 2 images over, there's a yellow glaze. So just keep that in mind. But this is just a page of the work that he was making at the time. I think Clark described it as all edge and no volume, which I thought was a pretty clever description, although I think there is some volume too as well, you know, nonetheless. So it was here that I connected to teaching more, right? You're in graduate school. As a high school kid, I had done a little academic tutoring, I had taught swimming, and there, of course, you assist classes. So that there was the beginning of that. And I'm just gonna, keeping that yellow pot in mind, I'm just gonna go over here to Theodore Bogler, the combinable teapot from the Bauhaus, right? So this is the 1920s. This is a version, you know, of a teapot that was assembled in many ways. And so Mark is really connected to that school of modernist thinking and brought that into the room, which was really refreshing and inspirational in lots of ways. And then the other thing that was quite amazing was he had this property, and he had just built a house up near Minneapolis, and this was south of Minneapolis by about 3 hours, and it had a kiln, and it had a building and a house and a outbuilding. And so we ended up first renting it from him and then later buying it from him. And Clary Ilian was down nearby in Iowa. So we kind of landed after that movement in the seat of where it was. And the we part of the equation is myself and Matthew Metz, who I met at Archie Bray Foundation. I was a summer resident. Carol Rohrbach was the director, and Matthew was a year-round resident. And this is an image of us back then. And this is when I wish we could just unmute because and I could hear everybody. And but anyways, this is that treadle wheel is from the school. I still have that in my studio and use it. It's an actual Leach treadle wheel. And of course, you know, Mackenzie managed to get a bank of Leach wheels in the University of Minnesota. Well, at some point when I was there, they started selling them off. People weren't using them. I think they kept several. So I think I bought this Leach wheel for like $200 back then and started using that. I set up a studio in one of the small outbuildings there. And on the other side is Matthew Metz, and he set up a studio in the other building, in the winter building, where we worked together in the cold season. So here is the kiln, a kiln that Mark built. It was a catenary arch and a updraft 2-chamber kiln. He fired it with wood and oil. We kept on that tradition. It was diesel oil, and a lot of people heated their houses with diesel. And there were these very simple step burners, were the drip burners, essentially, 2 of them that we would plug into this kiln and fired up to temperature. Those are the barn cats that came with the house. This is a stack of my work in that kiln, and you can see some of, at this time, what's happening with the glaze patterning and even the form simplifying, which I am sure was in some ways an influence of just moving out into that territory where we were and just, you know, what was in the water, perhaps. So after Minnesota, well, while I was in Minnesota, at some point I applied for some teaching jobs, and decided to take one at Alfred. We kept that place and commuted essentially for 3 years. In my 3rd year at Alfred, I decided to take a leave of absence for a semester, which I didn't know you shouldn't really do that when you're on a tenure track, but I decided I wanted to really be sure I was going to move east and really be sure I was going to teach full time before we gave up this amazing property. What was great about the property too is we had friends that would come out and work with us there, Sana Mimami and Andy Brayman and Rob Sutherland, a lot of folks. So it was a tough one to give up. Nonetheless, we did, and we bought another amazing property that had another great place on it. It had a house, and I don't know that I have a picture of the house, which is kind of funny, but maybe I was trying to just keep out of that territory a little bit. But it's a beautiful stone house. Jesse Shevard, who taught here, and John McQueen, who many of you may know, is an incredibly had a whole career as an incredibly talented maker of sort of basketry and sculpture of basket material and processes. Anyways, they had gone to Japan. They lived in this, and they came back and they built a stone house, and very small, multi-purpose, multi-use, which is efficient in terms of heating. So, it's a sleeping house in the day, a nighttime, a living space in the morning. But since that property was pretty affordable, we could build a kiln. So instead of having to spend money buying a house, we put up this kiln, and it's you can sort of see in the overhead there's a pond, and then to the left there's 2 roofs, and those 2 roofs are these buildings. They're very simple, really. We hired some Amish folks to come out. They're slab on grade. We did put heat in the floor. But aside from that, they're just, metal slab on grade and windows. The kiln we built there was somewhat of a romantic decision in the sense that we were, I had become quite attached to the wood and oil kiln. So that's Donovan Palmquist of Minnesota, kiln builder, and Metz, and they're standing in front of this one chamber that is a catenary arch that then has a sprung arch door on its second layer, which is what you're looking at there. It's a little complicated, which was the wood and oil kiln, which we fire. And we put on a pretty large chimney, which you can see here. And we now have tied into that chimney a smaller propane-fired kiln as well. So while the studio was being built, I was putting together work in my office, essentially, and Alfred is where I was working. And so here I'm glazing. And so we'll get into the work a little bit now. You can see over on, in the studio shot, you can see the pattern in the raw as it's applied, responding to the form, using various methods of application. So I'm mapping those forms, and I'm just very attentive to the sequence of the application, the color, and using different resist processes like wax and tape and latex, and dipping and pouring and trailing and brushing to get the glaze on there, and then choosing glazes based on color, eutectic, opacity, et cetera, et cetera. And here you can see those patterns fired. And so the character of the forms, the size, shape, and details, they give a certain kind of an impression of the form. And then the surface, the shape, the size of the field and pattern on the large piece start to act almost like camouflage. And, in this one, the color starts giving it a certain mood. The color can hold history. It can hold ideas about culture. The qualities of the glaze are, they're soft, they're hard, they're liquid, they're stationary. So, the complexity of the way the pattern reads, the surface itself, is organized, but within the melt of the glaze and the material expression, the content starts to emerge, and that meets sort of, whether you see pattern or don't see pattern, the scale of the pattern, and of course the detail of the objects too. So, like I said at the beginning, this idea of making teaching. So I was like, how am I going to do that in a lecture? I've never done that before. So this making, teaching, learning thing is just always swirling. So what I decided to do, and I hope it works for you, is I decided to take these 3 projects and look at them that are teaching projects and then talk about the work. So hopefully that will get there. And, I have to say it was really fun for me. I hope it plays out well for you a little bit as well. And, these things are obviously an ecology. Any way you compose your life, regardless of the different realms you're in, even when I was waitressing, making money and going to school, that is a certain kind of an ecology. And, it's, I love the research that Susan Samar did in her book, Finding the Mother Tree, where she really talks about the networking of trees. And I know it's sort of a lot of people are mentioning that now, but I'm convinced she was the originator of that. And you really should read her book. It's fantastic. Anyways, okay, so so we did Teachers That Inspire. So that was, Walter and Ferris and Albane, and now Teaching and Colleagues Who Stretch You. So I have still a colleague here whose name is Megan Jones, and she's a professor in art history. And she put together a really exceptional exhibition of tea bowls in the new Alfred Ceramic Art Museum building. And she produced a catalog. And she asked if I would write an essay for the catalog, which was very humbling. I was a little bit nervous about it because she had historians in the catalog primarily. And so saddling up with them felt challenging to be, since I'm not a historian. But she also selected this piece that I had made. This piece is called Tea for 20. It is actually a map of the kiln in Minnesota before we tore it down. So we tore the kiln down, or rather a nearby potter tore it down and took it away to use it somewhere else. And I took these 20 cups and I placed them all through the kiln to map the kiln. Then I made the 2 teapots that are with the cups. And I had started this patterning, this sort of tight glaze patterning. And I decided to put that patterning on the inside of the cup so I could get the wood patterns on the outside of the cups. And the number 20 was simply inspired by that being the size of my classes. And I had been teaching for a few years, and I did want to be able to have tea with my students. And sometimes we would have lots of different cups, but I also wanted to have the experience of having all the same cup and see what that conversation was like and how it changed the way people felt about how they were in a group or what they thought conceptually of how these objects operate in culture, et cetera. So that was behind the piece. When it came out of the kiln, what was really interesting to me was because I put the glaze pattern on the inside of the cup, it was like turning the teapots inside out. But what it also does is it makes the inside of the cup feel larger than the outside of the cup. And it's like when you turn an idea inside out. If you have an idea and you sort of turn it inside out, it gets bigger. And that's kind of what happened with the glaze on the cups. And, this type of formalism and sort of moving into read your work and read, or any work, the work of anyone. And of course, as teachers, we read the work of our students a lot. That exercise of reading the work is really through the abstraction of the pot, right? We have the subject of the pot, but the subject is not the meaning. The subject is a subject. It's a teapot, it's a cup. That's not the meaning of the object. But when you start to go past these quick reflections or quick identifications and work the language and work putting words to what you see and feeling what you say, then of course it all becomes bigger. And that's where you need to go if you're going to make cups. So the essay. So I needed to decide to write the essay. So I decided to write the essay. And the pattern on these cups, this tortoise name, comes from Staffordshire. There was this tortoise ware that was mimicking the oil spot glazes of the Song Dynasty, and it was called, they used tortoise to describe that pattern, etc. And so in this, to get going on it and to help me make the decision whether I was going to write it, I decided to, I had a picture of this tea bowl, which is this beautiful tortoiseware tea bowl. This is text from the essay I wrote. Some of the editing is still there. And I'm just going to read you the second paragraph, because that was really how I decided that I was going to do the essay, was through this conversation. And it was a conversation with my daughter. In the essay, it's the girl and the woman. So I'm the woman. The girl is my daughter, who at that time is like about 12 years old and has Chinese descent. So that second paragraph, the girl told the woman she wanted to play her the rondeau that she was learning. So she was learning an instrument. The girl said she liked the music very much because it reminded her of herself. Then the woman asked the girl if she would like to see the picture of a tea bowl, one the woman had long admired. She told her it was made 800 years ago in the very province across the world where the girl was born. The girl said the inside of the bowl looked like a map of the ground from very far away, and she said she wished she could hold it. So that kind of sealed the deal. I felt like at that point I really had to commit to writing the essay. So that is the project that I had wanted to tell you about. This is like here. Okay. That was the second project. So now the third project, teaching and projects that bring the outside to Alfred. So I had a great opportunity to put together, I had a budget, and I was able to put together an exhibition and a catalog and a lecture series and some studio demonstrations and presentations, etc. And so I did. And we called this Table Space. I pretty much headed up the whole project. I did have Albion Stafford, who had recently graduated, come with me and get on board with some of the selection of the artists and etc. And so that was really wonderful to have his partnership in that. And, Alfred is rural, it's centrally isolated. They call it a micro-urban environment due to the population fluctuating. There's a huge state school here, as well as Alfred University and the College of Ceramics. As you see, the show was called Table Space. And Anne Currier was a great inspiration in this because she loved putting on shows. And so she was my mentor through the whole thing. So the title page is here of the catalog. And yeah, we just worked with all of the, the gallery director, et cetera, and the funding, and away we went. So I'll move through this catalog. So the premise was really elemental, to take a snapshot of just contemporary artists who were working at the time, focused on vessel-based ceramic form for the domestic, to bring together their work for an exhibition, to have a workshop, etc. And it was amazing to work with the team there. And I have to say, Sean Murray was exceptional. He's our technician here, brilliant person. And he built all of these tables for me. I just finished building 2 of these tables with his pattern, literally. So now I know explicitly what that workload was like. And so just a quick overview of the project. This is Paul so I'll go through the pages, you'll see images and I'll describe them. Paul Eshelman, who is casting, many of you probably know him in the United States. He's casting earthenware, sort of solid colors. The artists were both national and international, more national than international. And then we also had Howard Rosati, author of A Theory of Craft, if you know that book. He did this opening essay. And here you see also this overview of that exhibition as well. So you get a sense of this, the size of it. Oh, just a sec here. Okay. And then a curator's statement by Albin and I. And you can see down in the corner here an image of just the gallery talk, and that's Ole Jensen. I'm holding an Andy Brayman bowl, and he's commenting on the foot of that bowl. And then Ole Jensen's work here. So Ole Jensen's working in Denmark, and he works in a lot of ceramics, but also other materials, and he designs and has the work produced at Royal Copenhagen. And there's another overview of the exhibition. And there was also an essay called Intervals on the Table by the historian Ezra Shales, who taught with us for a while, and he's now in Massachusetts. And here a little image, these small little detail images of the workshop. This one is Mark Ferris cutting a pattern, and here's an overview of him using a pattern to make a cup. I was going to read you this description by Ole Jensen. So there's Ole Jensen again down in the bottom corner. I have to pull out the catalog because that copy is too small. And I hope you like it. For some reason, I thought I should read it when I put this together. Ole Jensen. Oh yeah, so Ole Jensen reviews the drawings and clay models for jugs generated from a list of paired words he compiled with the audience. So he asked the audience to give him words. He's the most hilarious thrower. He was making these 6-inch high, sometimes hollowware, sometimes solid forms with these curves that he just were so gentle that he just nursed. And he was covered completely in clay after 2 or 3 of these. And he was just unbelievably great. And so he was asking for this feedback. And then on the table, he had these models he had made by interpreting the qualities of the words he was given in pairs. And so some were things like high, low, slow, fast, vague, clear. So he would pair these words, and then he would make the model of what those words were. So it was really a great time. He's brilliant if you have the chance to work with him at all. He did come and teach with us for a semester as well. And there is his table, another view of that. And then you can see this, the way he's thinking about the hand, the body, and the object, just so intrinsically, the way the thumb fits into the curve of this little lid, and you lift it to pull. And if you'll notice in the front, there's a little reamer there, and the spout of the reamer is also the handle that you would have on some kind of measuring cup, right? So the just really lovely sense of design. And that's a bowl of his as well. And then, of course, Andy Brayman. And this is when Andy Brayman is really getting digital work off the ground. And he's using, blue and white porcelain tropes to make patterns and putting luster on cups that will wear away and reveal something underneath it. And then printing these great shapes and decals and just going at it. And no longer making pots is Rob Sutherland, who is a brilliant maker, was a brilliant maker. He was later building and developing in Philly. I haven't been in touch with him lately, but a materialist and enjoying that. And then Sam Mulick, who was Edmonton, Canada, northern Edmonton, a really great potter who was trained at the Seth Cardew pottery, and just exquisite work, just the precision, and very much of a school, but very much sort of pushing the work to, a sensibility that was really, present in the traditionalism. And this is an image out of this fantastic book called by Tanya Herod about Michael Cardew. It's called The Last Sane Man, and it is literally a page turner. And he is, if you count in from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, the person with their head turned to the side, that is Sam. Then we have Lisa Orr, formerly residing and working in Texas, now in Massachusetts, who put together a beautiful, energetic celebration of color and form. And Sarah Yeager, who isn't potting now, but a great set up of Sarah's, these two types of wares that she was working with, but the white ware and the beautiful patterned porcelain as well. And a teapot of hers. And of course, each of these essays that are with these images are the writing of the artist. So really generous piece of writing from all the artists. And then Paul Catula, brilliant Paul Catula, brilliant maker, Ferndale, Michigan, his gallery there, and exquisite writing as well. And then Carrie Radish, really fun, exciting work too. And Tomu Hamada, the grandson of Soji Hamada, still working in the Mingei tradition. And I worked with his gallery to get some of his pieces in the show as well. And here's a page for Paul Eschman, who we saw at the beginning. Sandy Simon, her contributions through tracks to the field. And so she had these beautiful, I'm sorry I don't have an image of them, beautiful little silver spoons by Gary Nofke, and they're in those 3 little cups on the second shelf there. And then an image of some of her pieces a little bit closer. And then Takashi Yasuda. And he, his exquisite systems of making. I've just made a great handle, a board for rolling handles that he demonstrated here to our students. And then we have work of Mark Ferris as well. All edge, no volume. I don't know about no volume, but sometimes, but all edge, lots of, so, and of course he's using descriptive geometry. And now that there's, programs to make tents and boats, and there's a lot of ways to do that digitally. He did it when I was a student. He used to just do it all by hand with compasses and rulers. And Songard Marx, and she was in making and working in Germany, still is. And that was, a few essays, one by Mark Ferris, who quotes Woodman, and a couple of other people. And yeah, that was Table Space, really great. So let's go on to the sort of final project now. And this is going, yeah, I think this is going to be available to you if there's any of that information from Table Space you want. So teaching and how students shape the program. So this is the last piece about teaching. A student of ours, a graduate student, Andres Monzon, was here in Alfred, and his family was in Medellin. And he and I was division head, and we got together, and he said, I'd really love to bring my class to Colombia. And so myself and Professor Higbee and Andres worked together and put together a trip. And it was just really a fantastic experience. And, again, I mean, the students that come into your program sometimes they really become the program for the time they're there. So the program is never the same program at all. So the mission in Colombia was to share information, to exchange material knowledge, meet people who might be able to come teach here, perhaps, talk about access to just, raw materials, look at potteries that we're producing, large scale, see sites. Of course, you have to see Botero sculptures in Bogota, you know, check out indigenous clays. It was really just a brilliant trip. We were there about 10 days, and this is the group that went. It was quite a big group. And we stayed at a roadhouse that Andres' family owned, and he's on the left there, the second in with the round glasses, and his sister across from him with the hat on. And the table that you see here is what we woke up to every morning. It was this table set with food. It was exceptional. So we went to so many museums and saw many collections, and you know, none of the images do any justice whatsoever to the power of the work. It's just sort of, you know, collecting them to hope that you can remember what it was in your body to stand before those pieces. And some of them were, you know, in museums where we were pulling them out in trays. Some of them were behind glass. It really just depended. And you can see in Andres' thesis show, you can see Colombia, you can see the feeling of the figures, you can see the museology. I thought it was just so bold of him to, you know, draw this map in the gallery floor, on the gallery floor with this sort of grit and really, you know, embrace his, you know, his homeland. It was really terrific. So then when we went there, as part of the deal, we were to show images of Alfred. So I'll just show you some of the images of Alfred because maybe people in the audience haven't been here, and I'm going to go quickly, so I hope you don't get motion sickness through this. You know, yeah, I mean, the conversation just kept coming up, which instigated the trip about, you know, how do you make it go? Like, where are you? What's the country? What's your access? You know, what are the practices? How do we keep, you know, creative material culture alive? So this is a typical thing. This is typical at Alfred these days, you know, with the students, you often see these huge volumes they disappear into. There's a woman I saw today almost disappearing into a volume, in fact, as I came over here. And then there's the history of Alfred, you know, in 1900 when Theodore Roosevelt signed a bill. But, you know, Alfred University lobbied to get the New York State College of Ceramics. It wasn't a done deal that this is where it would go, but this school did not qualify for the land grants that funded places like Cornell because it was a private university. With the New York State College of Ceramics being public and therefore funded, they wanted it. But the brilliance of that is that there's clay. This is clay. We are standing on clay, right? So everything is built on clay, of clay, and there was small industry around here at the time. And so just in terms of the potential for the school to thrive, even metaphorically, it was completely in the right place. This is what art craft design looks like here in a way. It's not, it's separate. Like there are distinctions, theoretical definitions and distinctions, and we honor those and support each one of those as we support any way in which they may spin together. And you know, it's always the students that are making the next image of what that will look like. So we would talk in Columbia about realms of the theoretical too. So these are the slides that I showed in Columbia. So just to be clear about that. We talked about these raw materials. We showed images of raw materials, showed them our labs, how we set them up, you know, the students testing clays, the conversations, the research in groups, you know, the mixing of clays. So these were all things that we shared. We were just starting up, you know, doing more printing of clay at that time, et cetera. And of course, resources from the website as well. And then we just showed them the kiln buildings. You know, the kiln, this is a kiln building that we put up not too long ago, and all the kilns are built with students. Sean is designing all these kilns. We are bringing in some Blau kilns to the indoor facility, but, you know, the students are drawing their own kilns, and then their team building a kiln that Sean's designing for the space. So when they put up this building, we had all these chimneys standing with no kilns on them. So it was just a festival of kiln building. So here's the frame, here's laying the brick in the frame, here's building walls, moving on up the wall, here's designing the arch, making the arch form, putting the arch in place, getting the bricks on there, and then dropping the arch. And then the other kiln, which was a big endeavor, was the train kiln. So we now have a wood-firing train kiln here. And, oh, sorry about that. This is a picture of that firing, and Matt Kelleher, who's a faculty here, who's really sort of the expert, has a lot of expertise with that kiln. And then this is a great thing. This is this portable burner that the students can light so they can learn to light kilns. And it's out in the open and they can see all the parts and it's right there. It's not, the flame's not hiding in the kiln right away. And then of course they're learning to wire electric kilns as well. And Sean Murray's a great maker. These are a few of his pieces. And then Hannah Tomset, who's also our technician here. She is wiring and teaching wiring of electric kilns. And then on the right, you see some of her work. Those panels leaning against the wall are flat panels with images that are, surfaces that are added that are generating the illusion of the crumpled lead. And this is what the classrooms look like. Just full of stuff and people. This is what the kilns look like, full of things. This is what they can do with Presto lifts and the kilns that Sean built that are really big. They can make big things to fit in kilns. This is Cohen or Virge, who's BFA show. So this was one of the BFA students. Another BFA student, Olivia Tani, beautiful constructed pots. And then now we are back at me and teaching. This was actually from the PBS Craft in America. So that's it. That's my ride with teaching. That wouldn't have happened if I hadn't given Margaret that title. I hope that was good. And it's 7:24. So I guess we've been on we started at 6:30. So we're almost an hour. So I'm going to move through this work and then maybe we can take it to Q&A. I will talk just a little bit about the context of my work and then we can take it to Q&A and we can pull up pictures if we need to see more images, etc. So in the studio, these three realms have really started to become the way that I'm thinking about the way the work operates. So I'm thinking of service, storage, and display. So to serve, to gesture towards one another, to care for, to imagine the other, to display, to make visible, to bring into view, and to store, to preserve, to hold. And to hold, holding can be, for short durations of time, or you can hold something that's longer than a lifetime. And there are gestures that are scalable in the world. They occur in close proximity at individual household levels, and they occur at large scale and global levels. And they're also, the gestures are also become the conceptual underpinnings of the subjects, of pottery form that's familiar and congenial, and it can disappear into private and personal spaces, which is one aspect of the work. And then the other aspect of the work is that through its intelligence of, aesthetic and stance and image can excite and awaken attention and sort of reflect back to the viewer their own imagination. So here we have the two jars. We talked a bit about the glazing surface already, so I won't talk too much about them. Essentially the experience of the work is quite abstract. It has a name, it's called a jar, but, as we've said, the jar is not the meaning, the jar is the subject. The way the work means is different. And so, with the jar and with storage, this idea of time and storage and durations of time inspires what what these pots are and what they can be. And I'm also these forms are sort of torso size. I'm also, to move them around, you have to kind of pick them up and hold them against your body or put them on your hip. And so there's that changes your relationship to the object too. So I'm interested in that dynamic also with the pots. And I shouldn't say I'm interested in it because interesting is such an interesting word, but I depend on it. I really depend on that. So to serve, to gesture towards the other, of course, in this, formally in this piece, when you look at a teapot in the profile, you'll often see a section where the belly holds a pattern, and that's called reserve. The reserve, or certainly in English, production, you would reserve the space for the drawing or the image or the decal. And so I've taken the reserve and just pushed it over to the side, so it's like the image is just, or the imagery or potential image or the abstraction of what was image just gets pushed to the side of the pot, and it reveals the pot underneath it. And in that way, the pattern is sort of leaving the pot. I just had to show a picture of this because I love this stuff. I think a lot of people do, but it's just so direct and raw. This is British Staffordshire. It's creamware. It's salt glazed. And these are pew figure groups. This was made in the 18th century. And it got me quite interested in salt services and just the way every touch is visible underneath. And so there is a whole range of whiteware that I was involved in and haven't worked on lately, but would like to go back to. And that just, accelerated playing around with what the touch was. This pot too is beside this whiteware teapot is an early polychrome pot, and it's inspired by Staffordshire as well, just those funny kind of dumb little applique ferns too, applied to the surface, and then the glaze going on. And it was a lovely sort of choice, these glazes, in terms of the way it looks like tiger. I wrote an article about teapots. I think Mary Berenger asked me to write it, and I called it Necessity Presses. And I was talking about the hard working teapot. And what I mean by a hard working teapot is a teapot that actually works, and because you like the way it works, you go back and use it time and again. And in this article, I'll just read this little paragraph so you can get a sense of, yes, of these pots. So this is what it says in the last paragraph, or near to it. It is the hard-working teapot I've come to appreciate. The organization of the parts is exacting, but without this, there would be no urgency. Urgency occurs when necessity presses. Cultural necessity is always debatable. Personal necessity is more determined. I depend on the working teapot as the subject within the range of my studio output that carries the greatest potential to excel at being both discreet, private, and theatrical, public. The teapots are highly exposed in this wide range of narrative contexts, and in this they risk harsh valuation. It is my reliance on the urgency afforded by the working teapot that undermines my interest in more casual explorations of this subject. I prefer the making of a teapot to occur under pressure, like a confession. And there's the color image of the pot. Studio image. This is winter kettle. It's a large kettle, stoneware kettle. You can sort of see the glaze that was poured over this resisted pattern. If you look in the studio and you look behind that jar that's upside down in a bowl waiting to be glazed out the window, it's certainly not winter out there, but apparently the kettle had a different idea about it. But I was quite interested in the way the materials came together here, just spontaneously glazed, the kettle, the clay choice, the glaze choice, the pattern choice. I didn't expect it to add up the way it did, but it was just a vote of confidence for not always knowing what you're doing. A few more kettles. And then in here, just a comparison of them that I think I'll just go through. I won't talk too much about these so that we can finish. I became very interested. This is a page out of my sketchbook, which is not unlike a sketchbook of mine, a sketchbook page, but I became very interested in this book by Eve Sedgwick called Touching Feeling, and some of her thinking about uh, how things sit beside each other. And she writes that beside is an interesting proposition because there's nothing dualistic about it. A number of elements may be alongside each other, though not an infinity of them. Beside permits a spacious antagonism about several of the linear logics that support dualistic thinking: subject, object, cause, effect, differing, rivaling, mimicking, attracting. So, this is a series this beside series that I'm working on is really about trying to address some kind of dualism in these objects that is non-antagonistic. And so this is one piece in relation to that interest. Groups of wares. It's a compositional device. It's been around a long time in painting and in ceramics. And this was a foray into the electric kiln and other kinds of ideas about color and history, modernist ceramics, etc. Some, just ways things happen in the studio, like up in the right corner, there's a drawing where I'm painting these motifs on this paper and the ink keeps running down. I was actually not expecting that to happen. I ended up cutting out these paper plates from these drawings, etc. But this kind of, just sketching motifs up on a wall for something else altogether does things like spawn series, and it spawned this series. The most successful one of that series went to Margaret's show, the entomophagy, anyways, eating bugs, eating insects, entomophagus dining. So this was my piece for her show there. So studio process. This is another Margaret inspiration because she tosses out these assignments and I bite every single time. And it's always fun. I always learn something. It's really great. So there's this blackware that's come into the picture. Initially like this is not a good slide. Sorry about that. Kind of funny, pixelated, but a group that's now in Sweden in their collection at the National Museum there. And then this is another very current group in the studio where I'm working with a glazed surface and these very blunt forms, these reductive shapes, flat bottoms, many of the forms don't have cut feet. Some of the forms have the base of the foot glazed. That's, causing some of this upward running in here, for example. But this is a very current and live series in the studio right now. I call it faux wood grain. It's a character that's been taking me down, several trajectories in terms of research and form finding, and processes of making larger forms. And a group of this went to the Smithsonian not too long ago, which made me super happy. It was such an honor to be included in that. And then along the way, things like this happen where, I'm throwing a box for that series and I get the thing thrown, the lid's thrown, the box is thrown. I come in the next day to cut it off the bat because I forgot to, and the wire goes through the floor. So I pull it off the wheel and put it on a scrap pile and take the lid and snap it in half over my knee and go to bed and come back in the morning and look at the box and pull it off the pile and put it on the table and grab a teapot and put it on side and then take the half lid off the, the reclaim pile and put it on, and then it starts, something else is happening, and there you go. And then this happens. But this whole series has another story we don't really have time to go into. The print on the wall is a digital print, which is a compilation of all of the patterns that I've put on my work for the last 20 years, repeated and layered into a compost of pattern. And the composting sort of is like a breaking down of the pattern. This started during COVID. And the on the ground is these are 3 pieces about ground. This one here is the tile. These are ceramic sticks. There's water in that water pot. That open pot is a water pot. And this is another piece in that group, which is called repose. And you can see that this pot is also full of water, and these sticks are piled up in here. And this pot has to be kept full of the water, or if it evaporates, it will slide off that tile and all those sticks will roll down as well. So this was a series that came out of the studio. It ended up at Farron Gallery, and many thanks to everything Leslie Farron does. She's an amazing supporter, and put a show of this work in along with this other ware that I've been doing as well, which is blackware and of course redware. And these are locating themselves slowly, conceptually in the process. And then finally, drawing table, which is sort of a study in reduction in a way, but I was working on pattern, and there was a drawing show that came up, and what I was drawing was pattern. So I put this in the show, which was this. I was working with motifs and translating motifs into fields of pattern. So these plates have a motif, and that motif is then transferred into a field on the vellum that's rolled over the plates. And that was that piece. And that's what I have for you. I did put in a Matthew Metz demo just to perk everybody up. And of course, he's not here, but if it works, this will be kind of fun. But I don't know if I can make it work because I need to be able to scroll. And it might not be possible to scroll. Oh, there we are. Okay, so I can play, and I just want to scroll. So this was a friend of ours that came in and filmed him making. So this is your throwing demo for the night. And he's talking and making the box. And Tyler's interviewing him, and he's getting the floor on. Now he's getting the lid on. And he doesn't have time to shave, but he has time to make the box. And he's patterning and he's slipping, and then he's drawing, and it's getting close, and he's firing, and then we have, very serious conversations. Thanks.
That was fabulous, really fabulous.
I hope you had fun.
I had a wonderful time. It was nice to end with math there too.
I know, you need a demo to wake you up, right?
I do want to say that I have had nothing but delight in every time we've had of the 6 juried and invitational shows. That you've been one of 2. I think Leopold Fulem was the other person that I invited every year, and you're the only one that ever said, and he implied it, but that I was giving you an assignment.
It is. Well, no one else will. It's like, I like them. It takes off the pressure. It's sort of like great. But yes, Leopold, bless his heart. Oh my gosh, what a man.
Bill, do you have questions from the chat?
Yeah, there are a few questions and a number of messages. First one is, could we again have the name of the book about the tree network?
Oh, yeah, it's so good. It's,
John
let me
Neely
show it
put
to
that in
you.
there. John,
It's Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. Is that looking
yeah,
Yes,
that's good.
mirrored, is it?
And John Neely put that in the chat also, so.
Okay, that's great. It's a wonderful read. And a lot of people riff on her on that intelligence, but I swear to God, this is the origin of it all. But it's a wonderful read. It's a page turner. And I really meant it about the Cardew book. It's intense. I mean, it's really intense, and it's heavy actually, but it's also a page turner. And if anyone else is looking for an exceptional sort of read, oh, Margaret, I didn't get to talk to you about bins, but this is a brilliant catalog that you did. And I have used it putting together my essay about bins. But if you haven't done the Emergence magazine podcast or Emergence book of series, it's really, really important and timely and very much about sort of the state of our world ecologically in a powerful, imaginative way with many good thinkers. So.
Thank you.
So another question, is it possible to buy or access copies of the Table Space catalog?
I do have a few. I can dig out. So why don't that person can contact me? I can go to my division head and see, maybe that's that we hadn't. I know I have a few, I had several boxes and, we do have other great catalogs, boxes of them because long runs were produced. So it's a great incentive for me to see how many boxes I have. And I would love to just mail one anyways to an interested person who would love it.
So there are a lot of other comments with things like, that was great. Thanks for sharing. Thanks,
You're
Linda.
welcome.
Great presentation. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we're
I
going to.
love the spouts on your teapots.
Yes, of
That's
course.
fun.
So anyway, I think we're going to wrap this up tonight. And that was fabulous, Linda. And
Thanks so much.
I want to see this again. It'll be available as a recording soon, but we're so appreciative. It was just a real treat for all of us. Thank you,
Great.
Linda.
Well, thanks so much. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.